it's okay, please, giving us permission to record. So thank you all so much for joining us. This is my monthly online community called Death Over Tea. We meet monthly on the 27th of every month at 7 p.m. I am so honored to be able to have guest speakers, lovely people that have been able to share their experience and their knowledge and their hearts with us. But this month, I'm just so thrilled to be able to have Gabby Jimenez from the Hospice Heart join us. Just a little quick information about Gabby. If you've not read any of her books or have heard of Gabby, she's an end-of-life doula. She's also a hospice nurse. She's also a conscious dying educator. She's an author. She's a speaker. And I kind of feel like she has been a mentor for me, especially. I've taken several of her classes and have read all of her books. And one of the books I wanted to show you guys is my newest love. It's called the Doula Toolkit. It's been, you see all my little tabs here. It's been very helpful on my journey on my doula journey. So I would just love for Gabby to say a little bit about yourself and kind of how you started in this work and let us know what's on your heart today. So thanks for joining us, Miss Gabby. So excited you're here.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm sick, so just so you know, I don't usually have this congested voice, and I have a box of tissue right next to me, so just bear with me if you can. My name is Gabby. I am a hospice nurse and an end-of-life doula, and I provide end-of-life care and support, and I sit at the bedside of people who are dying, and it has filled me up on so many levels. Someone asked me recently why I wanted to be a doula. And after being a hospice nurse, why would I do that? Right? Usually people go the other direction. And my answer was this: being a doula and going through that training helped me to get to know who I am. I am a hospice nurse, right? But who am I? What are my gifts? What part of me would be drawn or compelled to do the work that I do? And how can I do it with a little bit more grace, and to truly understand the sacredness of death and dying? And once I started the doula training, I knew that this was the direction I wanted to go in, not necessarily to be a doula, but to be able to do this work from that perspective, from the heart-centered place. So even as a hospice nurse, I'm not about vital signs and technical words. I very rarely use words that kind of sugarcoat the reality of death and dying. I'm very honest. If someone asks me something, I will tell them the truth. And I have found that what I really like to do is educate. I want to hand over my tips and my tools and the things that I have learned so that other people can do this work in whatever form. It might be that this is a family member of yours. It might be that you want to be in this field. It might be that you don't know yet, but you just know that you're drawn to it. My thought is, if I give the stuff I've learned, maybe you'll be less nervous or afraid to provide it, because it's very hard. I've seen 2,000 people take their last breath, and my reaction to the 2000th is almost the same as to the first, because I realize that each person is unique and their story is unique, and I never want to lump them all together. They're People don't die the same. They don't live the same. They don't grieve the same. They don't love the same. They don't pray the same. They don't vote the same. They don't kiss the same. Right? So how we die should be equally as unique. And I think that's really where all the paths and all the irons and the fires and all the things that I've done, and I think that's where I am right now, is making sure that each human being is treated with dignity and respect and kindness, and that those providing the care have all the tools they could possibly need, always knowing that I do not know it all and I'm always learning.
I think that's really important to recognize, even just the difference between both of my parents' deaths, they were totally different. They wanted different types of music and my relationship with them personally was different. And who am I to judge um how I feel like it should go, right? I feel like I think one of the biggest things that I learned from you, Gabby, was that I'm not in charge, right? And as long as if I have no agenda, I learned that, so much from you. It's just like, I remove myself out of the equation, and it's just all about them. And that's a powerful thing, just knowing that I'm not in charge of this. They're in charge, and just honoring their wishes, because I may not agree or want what they want, but I have to really just honor it. So yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I think you made a really good point, Christine, because I think we tend to make other people's situations about us, right? Because we have a feeling, we have a reaction to it. We're taking it on in many ways, but it's not actually about us. When my brother was dying, he just died 2 years ago, and he was in the ICU for many days. And a few days before he died, he woke up, and the doctor came to talk to him, and they said, Ben, if we can't take you off the ventilator, and if we can't take you off the oxygen, do you want to be on machines to stay alive? And he said yes. And I'm like, no, no, why would you want to do that? But he said yes. So I just sat there, and then they said, okay, you may have to have a trach. Is that okay? Yes. I'm like, no. Right. And I'm having a hard time with this. And this went on. It got to the point where the doctor said, okay, there's a very good chance that you will be in a care facility the rest of your life. And I couldn't, right? So I ran after the doctor after he left, and I said, you need to get palliative care in here. You need to get him to change his mind. This is not right. This isn't what he wants. And and then it was kind of like all the voices of all the people I've ever cared for said, Gabby, this is not about you, right? They threw my own words at me. And maybe he just wanted to live, and would want to live at any cost. And I had to make peace with that. And and I had to remember the same thing I tell everyone else, which is this isn't about me. And the only thing that I could do is say, okay, Ben, if this is what you want to do, then I support that. But then 2 days later, he didn't make it. They called us and said, he's very close. We came in the room, and because he had said all of that, right? He was on full code. So they did everything. And if any of you have ever witnessed it, it's a very horrible thing to watch. I had to witness that. And his daughter had to witness that. And when I walked in, I screamed at them to stop. And my niece said, be quiet, Annie, be quiet, Annie, just shut up. And she was really mad at me because I wanted them to stop saving his life. And so I stopped, and the doctor came out. She said, we're doing everything we can. And she said, what would you do if that's your dad? And she said, I'd listen to your auntie. So now it did become about me, because this is something I understood. I knew that he was dying. I knew there was no way out of this, but I also knew that his daughter needed to see something different. She needed to have some peace in her heart. So they let me turn everything off. I got her at his bedside, and she said, what do I do? And I said, you talk to him, because he hears everything you're saying. And we told him how much we love him. And he took his last breath. And it was hard, but I felt good in my heart that even though I didn't agree with his choices, I let it be his choice until I truly knew that it was okay to change things up a little bit, because now it had to become about his daughter and what her last memory would be. And she said goodbye. She held his hand, and there weren't beeping sounds, and there weren't machines. And I know in my heart I did the right thing, but each situation is so unique, and it's not about us. Even though we have opinion, we have to respect the voice, even when it's not being heard anymore. We have to respect their voice.
Does everybody need tissue?
I'm sorry, I don't even know why I went in that direction. It's because I don't feel good. I'm feeling a little emotional right now. So when I blow my nose, we'll just pretend it's because I was crying.
Oh, that was beautiful. Yeah, I think I remember for me, I had a situation with my dad who was diagnosed with metastatic lung cancer at age 63, and the doctor gave him 6 to 9 months, and my dad walked out of there saying, "I'm going a year. I'm going to make it a year," and I had to really. I kind of just knew that was he had cancer, metastatic cancer to his brain, his heart, or I mean his brain, his bones, his liver, lungs, it was everywhere. And I just knew in my heart that he didn't have that much time, but I really had to honor his decision to do everything that he could. And he did not have a DNR as well. And I remember having this conversation with him in the hospital and saying, Dad, is this really what you want? And he had, and finally he said, just let me go.
Mm.
And those conversations unfortunately happen at the end, or they don't happen at all. And those types of situations happen. And and I'm so grateful that I was brave enough to have that conversation. Granted, it was much later than it should have been, but I think it's so powerful. I think knowledge is powerful, and being able to help have people have those difficult situations way before they turn into situations like that, right? My dad was able to have one of the most beautiful end of life experiences that I had seen. He let go, he surrendered, he had some restlessness, but he finally surrendered into it. And the greatest gift that I received was he died in a hospice unit at the VA hospital in San Francisco. And they said to me, don't, you can stop being the nurse, you just be the daughter. And so I got to just love on him. And I don't know if everybody has that opportunity. I wish that for everyone. But I do think that having those difficult conversations um, is, I don't know. I just want to encourage everyone to be brave. Like those are pivotal moments to have those conversations. I was talking to Karen, who's on the call, and she had to have a conversation with her parents just this last weekend. And because we don't know what the end will look like for people. And we talk about a lot about birthing and the end of life are very similar. We never know when our due date is coming, but if we can prepare and have these difficult conversations beforehand, I think it really helps to really just have a smoother landing. So, yeah, that's beautiful.
I think people are afraid to talk about it. Like, I think they think if I talk about it, it'll happen sooner. But
Mhm.
talking about it only allows the people you love to know what's most important to you. You know about my best 3 months class, Christine. I teach this class, and there's always a variety of different people in it. It could be somebody who has a terminal diagnosis and nearing their end. It could be somebody who's caring for someone who is dying. It could be someone who's working in the end of life field. It could be someone who has lost someone in their life due to death and they're questioning their own mortality. The idea of this class is to write your own end of life plan, right? To put it in writing. And the purpose of that is because I realize that whatever age you are, whether you have an illness or not, if you don't have it somewhere, what matters most to you, then you're expecting that someone else will make a decision on your behalf. And that's not okay. Because when my brother was in there, I had no idea what he wanted. We hadn't talked in such a long time, like years. So I remember that when he was in high school, he liked 70s soul. So I just kept playing 70s soul, thinking that that would at least tap into something that mattered to him. But I didn't know if he wanted the lights on or off. I didn't know if he wanted people to touch him or to leave him be. I didn't know if he wanted socks on. I didn't know anything that mattered to him. And I wish I did, because at the very least, I would have liked to have honored his wishes. I have literally, and this probably won't surprise any of you, I have a stack this big. It's in a fireproof envelope and or fireproof bag. It has everything. It has my I haven't done an advanced directive, but I did, my 5 wishes, and I did my mortality workbook, and I did all the things that have all the things, right? But it also has my passwords and my wishes for things. I even have, if any of you have been on my Hospice Heart Facebook page, it's just this community that I love. I've even written a letter to them that I want shared with them if I should die, letting them know how much they've touched my life. I have letters for my grandchildren and my children so that I know that when I die, I'll have the last word, but also they'll get to have something that I left for them. I've started putting little stickers on things that I want people to have, not because I want to die. I have so much more I want to do, but it's because I don't want to put that responsibility onto other people. And it's about, I think about the five senses. Like if you could just start there, what do you want to see? What do you want to hear? What do you want to feel? What do you want to smell? You know, people might bring you flowers and that's really lovely, but what if they're stargazer lilies? Now, I think stargazer lilies are beautiful, but have you, I mean, and I forgive me if I'm insulting anyone here, but the smell gives me a headache. If I didn't have a voice and someone placed a big bouquet of those next to my table, I or next to my bed, I I wouldn't be able to tell them to please remove them. What if we just honored our five senses? What if we just said the things that mattered most to us? What do we want to hear? Do you want to listen to Tom Petty? Do you want to listen to country? Or do you want to hear Britney Spears? I mean, the person that comes into your room is going to turn the music on that they like unless they know what you like. And it goes for all of those things. What if you just started there? Start with figuring out the five senses, and from there ask your friends and family, the people that are closest to you. Ask them what they would want. Ask them one question. If you could have a scent in your room or no scents, what would it be? Or think about the eyes, right? You're lying in a hospital bed, especially, and you're looking up at the ceiling. Chances are you're staring at that light. Do you want that in your eyes? Then write that down. Start with the five senses. But if you have this conversation, if you share with someone the things that matter to you, then that person can honor your wishes. Or that person can have the tools to help the people who love you honor your wishes. I do that a lot as a doula. I help people just to create their end of life plan way before a diagnosis has even been given. What if we all did that? Talking about death and dying is not going to happen sooner because you talked about it. Any more than not talking about it will slow it down. We need to talk about it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I have to say, if anyone hasn't taken Gabby's uh best and last 3 months of that,
3 months.
yeah, it's beautiful. It was really helpful for me. I wrote my own eulogy, and I'm rewriting it because I'm not even the same person that I was 6 months ago, right? And so it was really like there's water cremation, right? There's what is it, aquamation, so now I'm kind of considering all these different things. But so I think that again, my husband's just like, would you stop about talking about this stuff? But and I'm changing my mind constantly, but and that's okay, right? We get to change our mind, right? But I do think that it's empowering to be, because I'm a bit of a control freak and I want things my way. I have a client of mine that I do Reiki for, and she has Alzheimer's and she loves Frank Sinatra's My Way. She can't connect to reality often, but then as soon as I put Frank Sinatra on, she's singing. And so I just love that song My Way, because I get to choose how I want it to be at the end if I do get a choice. And so I think that's really empowering. And your class was just super helpful in helping to identify. I think that it's important. I think that's important for all of us to be able to identify, even just starting with the senses. So yeah, it's powerful. Yeah, thank you for that. I wanted to mention you had said that you have a new book coming out, and I don't know, is that okay to share here?
Sure.
Okay. But, one of the things that we were kind of talking about in the beginning was just navigating those hard conversations, and I think, can you speak to that, about maybe what your book might be about?
Sure. I've written a couple books, but the last year and a half I've been working on a series. And my point with this, I priced them really low so they're affordable. I made them easy to read, and they're kind of handbooks, right? The first one is end of life tips, which is the questions that are commonly asked when someone is dying and near the end of life, so that those caring for them would know what to expect. And I make it very clear. I also use lots of pretty pictures because, we always want something nice to look at. The other book is Dignity Day, which is about the medical aid in dying. And if you don't support that, please know that I respect that as well. But I am an advocate for it, and I have been present for about 200 people who have chosen to do that. And what I have noticed is there's a lot of curiosity, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear. And for the people who love this person but don't support it, they struggle with, how do I be at the bedside of someone I love when I don't approve of their choices? So I wrote a book for all of them. And then my brother died. And I wrote Healing a Grieving Heart because I realized that even though I feel like I have all the tools in the world, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to grieve. I didn't know how to prepare my heart for such a great loss because I have so much regret in our relationship. Here I teach all these classes about teaching people to let go of that, and I hadn't done my own homework. And so that book was really my journey, which I hope would help heal people. And the fourth book, which is the end of the series, is, and I haven't told anyone the title, you guys get to hear it first. It's not very creative, but you'll get it when I tell you. The book is called The Conversation. It's a guidebook to help people talk to the people they love about death and dying. And in it, I have all the different ways that you can have conversations. And I share stories of patients that the conversation changed the way that person died and how the people who love them were able to start their grief journey. And it's about finding creative, beautiful, considerate, compassionate ways to have a conversation with someone who's dying in a way that says, I hear you. You know, we tend to listen to people only to hurry up and finish them so we could tell them what we think or what we feel or what we would do. But what if we just listen to hear and validate, right? If we honored their words, and then when that time comes, which it often does, where that person doesn't have a voice, because you listened, because you had that conversation, you get to be their voice. And that is one of the most beautiful gifts of all. And so I finished that book. My birthday, I turned the big 6-0 on April 7th. So I've decided that that was going to be my publishing date. So it'll come out then. Thank you very much. And I'm actually going to mark that one down a little lower than the others because I don't want people, finances are so messy. I want it to be something that's helpful and affordable at the same time. It's not about the money. It's about getting the information out and truly handing over the tools so that other people can either do this work or provide the care for someone that they love. And so this book I'm really excited about because it's literally the conversation.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Um, it's scary to have the conversation. It is so hard. It's hard to have conversation in the grocery store. I was at the checkout, I was in the checkout line, and the woman was having a really hard time checking out my groceries. She seemed like she was having a really hard time, and the gentleman in front of me was seeming like he was having a little difficult time as well. And so I said to the gal in front, at the register, and I'm like, gosh, you seem like you're having a hard time today. And she just broke down and cried and said that she had just lost her mom. And if I wouldn't have said that, and people, what I loved mostly was that the people behind me, you could just feel like, oh, we've got all the time in the world, which I just really appreciated, her being able to be able to share that she was having a really hard time. And I was I left crying because I think oftentimes we're just in our busy lives. And when you ask someone, how are you, people don't always necessarily have time or want to hear to really know how are you? Do you really want to know how I'm doing? And so I think it's really meaningful for hearing kind of bearing witness to, and we're all carrying around a little bit of grief and suffering, and just being able to honor that. Gosh, you're having a hard day, and I see you. We're all super fragile. I think we're coming out of this post COVID. There's still, there's just a lot of things going on in the world, and um, there's a lot that we can do for one another to just take that time to really hear and listen to people. It's important. It's easy to just go through our days, but boy, it could be really meaningful for someone, especially at the end of life, just to be heard.
Yeah, and to be maybe a little more patient with people. We
Yeah.
don't know what they're going through. You've seen all the quotes out there. We don't know what another person is going through. Their anger or aggression or bad mood or whatever might be coming from something very personal. And I mean, we don't want to encourage bad behavior, but I do think that we have to be a little patient,
Mhm.
and if we were a little patient, then maybe the person behind us or next to us or in front of us would also practice a little more patience, but also compassion and understanding, and knowing that, like you said, when you ask someone how they are, most people say, I'm fine, especially grievers. I'm fine. Do you need anything? No. But what if you instead said, you look like you're having a tough day. Can I help you with something? Or just acknowledge them. We're so afraid, I think, of showing some sort of kindness or extending a hand. One of the things I really did like about COVID, there wasn't a lot I liked about COVID, but I did like this, was the way neighbors were helping neighbors. I didn't like the fighting over toilet paper. Like, who needs 700 rolls of toilet paper? That's just so ridiculous. But what I did like was neighbors saying, "Hey, I have an extra roll of toilet paper. Would you like one?" Why can't we be that community? Where we honor and respect that people are all going through something. You're not immune to struggle. We all have struggle. It's just in different layers. And ours is not worse than someone else's, and which means theirs is not worse than ours. But if we don't extend a hand, if we don't check in, if we don't just acknowledge them, then maybe their pain will linger longer. What if we could just reduce it a little bit simply by being present and listening?
That brings up a good point, Gabby, because I think one of the things that just in the short time that I've worked with people at end of life, I mean, of course, the focus is always on the person having the end of life experience, right? It's all about them. But I also feel like the caregiver gets forgotten, and so I've been really trying to be mindful about once I get my person tucked in and cared for, turning to that caregiver, turning to the loved one, and how are you, you know, um, with the hospice company that I was working for, um, it was just I would be bringing flowers when their loved one was getting close. I would bring a little something for them, a little chocolate, some food, some tea, and so the hospice company that I work for allowed me to just create these things. They're called caregiver comfort kits,
Mm.
and you know how we always just give the patient gets the comfort kit. They get their medications with instructions, and everyone gets one when they get admitted to hospice. So I came up with this caregiver comfort kit, and it had a little bit of essential oil. It had a candle or a battery operated candle. It had some goldfish crackers. It had some chocolate. It had a little bit of essential oils. It had a thing of tissue, a little cup of soup or miso soup. It was just something to just give them because they're important too, and they're doing a majority. They're doing the work, and this is their love, right? This is their person, and I think that they're just as important as the person that's having their end of life experience, and really holding them up because they're the ones that are um, helping them to prepare and love on them is, I think, can really help the healing process as well. I had a gentleman recently. This woman was passing away, and I was going into the room for doing Reiki for her, and she had her son and two grandsons, and they were just sitting there looking at their phones. And I'm sure that they were engaging and loving on her before I came into the room, but I had developed a relationship with her doing Reiki, and she had all of these beautiful songs that we created a playlist, and so I shared with her son and her grandsons. I'm like, this is the music that we came up with, and they were so excited, like to do something with her, and I think that I feel so just passionate about just bringing the caregivers into the fold and supporting them and holding them up because they're the ones that have to kind of deal with their grief and deal with the loss. But I think that we remember, how it happened in the end. That's what we take with us, and I think that that's really important for us to remember when we're working with people at the end of life. Is just kind of helping to remind, setting the stage, of how they can really participate in their loved one's end of life experience. It's not just observing, to really just kind of dive in and lean in with them. So yeah.
Absolutely. There's two things that I say all the time to the person at the bedside. One is I give them permission to walk away. And by that, I mean, go get some coffee, take a nap, take a shower, go for a walk, do something that you love doing. You're allowed to do that. But most people have this sense of abandonment. If they leave, then I'm leaving them alone. And I understand that. So I often will say, they don't take with them who was there at the last breath. They take with them who was there all along. And that means right here, the care that you had provided, right? Because sometimes people don't want an audience. Sometimes they actually want a little privacy and they don't want to be stared at 24/7. And sometimes they don't want that to be the last thing you see. So if you step out of the room and they take their last breath, it wasn't because you've done something wrong. In many ways, it's because you gave them permission to let go in peace and privacy. But the other thing is about the hearing. You probably have all heard that the hearing is the last to go, that it's heightened at the end of life, which I have been saying for years, and I completely agree with. When my brother was in the ICU, I every day I talked to him about all the things that I felt bad for, because we had a big fight. And even though it was his doing, I mean, he really is the cause of it. I allowed the time to continue. I allowed us to waste time. And I had a lot of regret at the bedside. So every day I said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I extended forgiveness and I offered forgiveness. And I said, when you get better, Ben, we're going to do differently. We're going to do it all differently. And on that one day when he woke up and he was able to talk, I said, Ben, did you hear me? I talked to you every day. I listened to you. I played music for you. And he said, I'm sorry too. Now, obviously that's heartbreaking, right? Those were the best words I could have ever heard, because those were the last words he said to me. But that's not as important to me as knowing that he heard mine. And that's when I really want people to know now that I can speak without any any question whatsoever, and complete and total certainty that they hear everything you say. And so if you walk away, just say, I love you. And if you're going to do this when I'm gone, it's okay. I love you. Thank you and goodbye. And then if you walk back and they're still there, then that's bonus time. That's just more time with them. But it's important that you know in your heart without any question that everything you say, they hear. And so when someone's sitting at the bedside and they're not showering and they're not eating and they're not sleeping, it's because they feel this need to be there 24/7. And it's okay. You don't have to do that. It's not a requirement. Some people, it, they're not going to listen to you and they're going to do it, especially people who've been married 60 or 70 years, right? Because they've been with this person for such a long time. They're not going to walk away. But that's when hospice is a really good offering, because they have hospice volunteers that will sit vigil at the bedside. So your person has someone there and you don't have to feel like you've left them alone. But I will tell you that almost every person I've talked to does not want to be stared at the entire time, especially when they're not talking and they're just trying to lean into what's happening. But they do hear you. So say all the things. Don't mince, don't waste a word, say it all. And also know that if you step away and it happens, they don't take with them who was there at the last breath. They take with them who was there all along. I truly believe that.
Thank you. Do you have any other advice for caregivers, Gabby? Like if you had someone who had that was just given a diagnosis, they're terminal, they're just, um, I think what I'm thinking about is, you know, um, like the caregiver who's, voluntarily stepping up to the plate to care for their loved ones, but there's potential loss of employment, because they're losing so much work, and just the whole thing about not being able to take care of themselves. What kind of advice would you give to someone who is in that situation? Because it's happening all the time, right? People want to die at home. Like I think a majority of people want to die at home, but it is a lot of work. And I think that there might be some hesitancy for people to sign up for hospice because of that. It is a huge responsibility, and nobody wants to be a burden on their family. I think that that's probably one of the biggest fears for people. Nobody wants to be a burden to their family. So I don't know, I'm just kind of thinking, what would you say to someone in that situation?
Well, I think most people are in that situation, and many people cannot afford a caregiver. Caregivers are expensive. This is when I do think hospice is a good thing. And what people are not as aware of is the offerings that come with hospice. First of all, it's a team. So it's a group of people that will see them, several days during the week and have an extra pair of eyes on them, right? Which is helpful. The social worker can get a letter for your work that says that you're going to need to stay home. There's others, uh, I'm not going to say if it's state or county or what offerings that could give you a little extra money for caring for your person, right? I mean, there's some things that are available to people. I don't know them all, so I'm not going to pretend to, but I do know that social workers have other resources that could help you in that situation. They can also help find caregivers, maybe ones that are a little less expensive than others. They can help with funeral plans. They can help reduce the cost and expense. Even being on hospice reduces the cost and expense, the supplies, the materials needed if they have wound care. I mean, this is all hospice masterclass stuff, but one box of the 4x4 foam dressings that you might put on someone's wound is $65 for 10. That's a lot of money. Hospice covers that. So what I want people to do is realize that putting someone on hospice is not a diagnosis. It is a plan of care for the diagnosis. And the offerings that come from that can help reduce expenses. That puts stress on the caregiver. We have hospice volunteers that can offer you respite. They can sit at the bedside while you go to the grocery store, or they can take your person out for a walk and you could just have 5 minutes in the kitchen alone with a cup of coffee. I think the best advice that I would give a caregiver is to accept the help that is being offered, because most people will say no. They feel this need to do it all themselves. And we have to practice self-care, right? I have to practice self-care. Christine has to practice self-care. Anybody who is at the bedside in any way, that's hard work. I provide self-care for myself physically, emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. I tap into everything because I realize that I'm made up of all these different things, and all of it reacts differently to what I witness. And I witness a lot, and it's heavy. During COVID was especially hard for me, and I became ill physically because I let myself go and I didn't practice self-care. Our bodies react to our emotional response to something that is going on. It reacts emotionally, of course, but physically in many levels, and we can become sick. And that's the thing we want to avoid. I think the first thing I would suggest to anyone who's caregiving would be to reach out to anyone and just ask for support. It's hard to do, I know, but if it is being offered to you, accept it. You're not failing your person because you took time out for you. And I think that's the thing that we need to get across. And if they have been given a diagnosis of 6 months or less to live, start hospice. It is not a death sentence. Some people actually graduate hospice, and maybe the care that's being given can help. Even just a home health aide to come and give a bath 2 or 3 times a week. That's just help. And I think we have to be better at being a community and helping those who are going through that and working that hard, because it is very hard.
Thank
Sammy, you
you,
have a
Gabby.
question?
So one of my best girlfriends, she's 58. She's follows you, Gabby, on your hospice heart. Um, and she's in stage 4 rectal cancer. She just hit her 2-year anniversary. Is you know, it's you know, it's a life-ending diagnosis. Um, she has a great group of girlfriends that we're all rallying around. We deliver things weekly, daily. Her and her sister are twins. They've always lived together their entire 58 years. They have a tough house situation, and kind of the feeling that everybody has is that they're having a hard time making the jump to hospice because they don't want people inside their home, and they're afraid of letting people in their home. And none of us girlfriends are always, we only have porch visits with her anymore. The house is just the two of them, leaving and coming, and none of us really, you know, we talk a lot, but we just don't know how to extend that grace. You know, we all talk about how it doesn't matter to us, but to them, they're very, you know, they just, that's their kind of holdback. So do you have any good suggestions for how to make that, you know, because it's any time is going to be the time that they can accept hospice.
Well, I think that you're doing all the right things. You know, the fact that you guys are showing up in the way that you are, and to not stop doing that, you know, you can't change their mind. And even though we think it might be better for them, I have a quote that I say all the time, which is meet them where they are, not where we want them to be. And that's hard because you and I know, Sammy, that it would be better for them if they started hospice for her, right? But it's not our decision to make. And so what you could do is maybe get some materials. I'm not going to sell my books to you. You could there's a million books out there, but maybe get some materials for them to read so they could better understand, you know, or maybe, you know, I'd be happy to talk to them if they want to do a Zoom. Maybe I can help them to see how that would benefit them. There's just, people are afraid, and it's because there's not enough education or information out there. And I think if people knew the extent of what is available, the resources, the information, the education, and the support, I think they would be more inclined to start it sooner. But in your situation, I think that just keep doing what you're doing, and maybe give them some guides, some things that they could use to help support them. You can share them with links on my website. There's a section called podcasts and interviews. I've got like 50 interviews that I've done with some really incredible people, and it's about hospice, it's about end of life, it's about grief, but it's also all about how to take care of someone who's dying. And so those are all free. Give them links that can guide them, at least your friend, to help her support her sister if they truly are going to be adamant about not bringing hospice in. But keep
Thank you
doing what
very
you're doing. You're doing all the right
thank you.
things.
Thank you. It feels like it. It's
You are.
you know, a labor of love, and it's, yeah, it's one of our lifelong girlfriends. So but I appreciate the words. I know, again, she's just she's a huge follower, always makes comments on a lot of your posts, and so thank you. I thanks for the words.
I know you probably can't say her name right now, but I do read every single post and comment that's on that page. Please tell her I said hello and that I'm holding so much space for her.
There's a couple of comments in the chat. Vivian says that there is a federal program called FMLA, the Family Medical Leave Act. She says that I don't believe it pays full time, but holds your job until you can return. So, so there is not payment, but there is some disability family. I think that there is some money available for people.
There's a lot more available than we realize.
Yeah. And then someone else says, working for hospice, I always come as a guest into the patient's home, judgment free. Yeah.
I love that.
It's important. It's important. So Fred, you raised your hand. Please feel free to chime in.
I was curious if either of you, Gabby or Christine, have, I'm a hospice volunteer in the San Francisco area, and San Francisco's done hospice for many years. And now we're seeing more and more end of life, people taking end of life medication through the end of life protocol. I think, Christine, you're in Idaho. Gabby, I don't know where you're at, but it's probably not available in Idaho, but just wonder if doulas are available to help organize end of life events. I had a patient that had a party and had a lot of friends over, and I helped buy the food for them to help present and decorations and so on. And just wonder if either of you are involved in that sort of thing.
Well, one of the books I wrote is Dignity Day, which is all about it. I live in California, which it's been legal here since 2016, and it's one of the 11 states that it's legal in. And there's a lot of, there's the truth of the matter is once you have been deemed appropriate for it and you followed all the protocols, you don't actually need anyone there, and you can have anyone you want there. I always suggest that there be a doctor and nurse there because, well, I have never witnessed anything horrible happen, and I've witnessed 200 people take these medications. I think it's safe to have someone there. As a doula, you can be there as a companion, as an offering of a support, much like a hospice volunteer. I think hospice volunteers are doulas, to be quite honest. So yes, you can absolutely be there. There are just things that people should know about it. You don't just take medications and die. It's first of all, a lot of protocols, which I wrote about in my book, but there's a website. It's compassionandchoices.org. And there is so much great information on there all about that. It lists the states it's legal in, and each state has some different protocols. We even call it different. It's medical aid in dying is kind of the umbrella, but in California, we call it End of Life Option Act. In Oregon, I think it's Death with Dignity. So there's a couple different names for it, but it is something that a doula could be present for. Anyone can be there or no one at all. This gets to be your choice. And the beautiful thing about this option, besides it honoring someone's wishes, is that it is not something that's on the death certificate. So this gets to be your story to tell. No one will ever tell your story unless you want it told. So you have the autonomy and privacy of that. And I think people don't realize that, because there's a lot of people who don't support it and who can be almost angry about it. So you have to be very careful who you talk to and tell. I have been to the ones that you mentioned, where there was tons of family and everyone was having some sort of cocktail, and they might be dressed up, some wore party hats, some just sat in quiet, some had music. I mean, it's, when you're given a terminal diagnosis, your autonomy, your voice, and your choice has been taken from you. The right to choose to take these medications gives you your autonomy back. And I really respect that, because it ends suffering. We treat our animals better than we do our humans. And so, but there's other things too. It doesn't have to be this. It doesn't have to be medical aid in dying. It doesn't have to be taking medications to end your life. It could be trusting the medications to end pain. And that's what we want, right? We want to end suffering and honor that person in the way that they choose. So back to your question, yes.
Thank you. There's a couple of comments in here. There's also the paid family leave. We were talking about FMLA, and Tina says that FMLA is federal and they don't have anything to do with your job except saving the position for you. Your job can let you take your PTO besides the FMLA, and they don't have to save your current job, just the position. And then Karen says that Compassion and Choices is awesome. There's so many resources available. Catherine says, as in Canada, a medical professional is mandatory during the medical and aid dying procedure. And
Canada
then
has a different protocol than all the other states. Canada, they do it with an IV, which they don't do that anywhere else except for, I think, in Switzerland. So absolutely, they would have that. But honestly, I think everyone should have the doctor or nurse there. I think it's just a safer way to do it.
Yeah. Vivian says here in Grass Valley, there are some options to obtain grants from companies to help pay for in-home care. I believe the social worker at any hospital or hospice can help with that, to help find some resources. It's not a lot, but it can help. The other option too is GoFundMe. There's a couple of great programs here in the Treasure Valley where there's a Make-A-Wish program for kids. So there's a program actually called Wish Granters, and just helping to grant final wishes for adults, which is amazing. And so, there are resources available. We just have to kind of help support one another in finding those. Um, Vivian says, Vivian says here in the US too, as I understand, a doctor has to mix and hand the patient the medication, and the patient must drink that themselves.
Well, not in the
Um,
US. I mean, in certain places in the US. But I
oh,
mix the meds as a nurse. It's based
okay.
on the companies and the facilities protocols. So some the doctor has to mix them, some the nurse and the doctor have to step back and can't be present when it's being ingested. Some like where I do it is that I can mix it and be present. But that's not always the case. They have their own protocols to follow.
Oh, okay. So it's company specific.
I mean,
Okay.
we
Okay.
have to follow the main guidelines. It's not just you can just fill out a card and go and get it. It doesn't work that way. But once you've followed all the protocols, and each state does have their own little things, like some of them you can actually, I think Oregon and maybe New Mexico. I might be wrong about the New Mexico. Maybe it's Washington, but there's two states that I know for sure that you could actually go there and take it whether you're a resident or not. So there's a lot of things that have changed over time that is making it a little easier for people. But each state is different. And at this time, there's only 11. But Compassion and Choices has all of that.
So Gabby, Sammy has a question. Will your new book, The Conversation, be available on audio?
No, I'm just not that fancy because I'm I self-publish. I do all the work myself, and I wouldn't even know how to do that. But my dream, Sammy, is that somehow out there in this big universe, a publisher is going to come and say, Gabby, I want all your books. I want to put them on audio. I want to put them in different languages so you can have them in every country. So maybe someday, yes, but not today. I'm sorry. But you know what? If you
Wonderful.
want, I could get on Zoom one day and read it to you.
We would all love that,
Wouldn't
Gabby. I
that be
could
fun?
listen
I'll
to you
just
for
read you a
hours.
bedtime story.
I would love that. I really want to just encourage people. If you haven't taken any of Gabby's classes, I would just really encourage you. You have this wonderful class about ritual, and I really like behind me, I have a glass bowl where I have hearts. So I'm kind of copycat. I know.
My idea, but it works,
Totally.
right?
It totally does. And so every time I have a client or a client that passes away, I grab a little crystal heart and I put it in there. And so, it's just like there are just some that really I just remember. I have one that passed away last year that had pancreatic cancer, and oh my gosh, she was an amazing woman. And every time I hear Chris Stapleton, it's her. And I think ultimately it just reminds me that I think that's my biggest fear is I don't want to be forgotten, right? I think I would hope that someone would remember something about me and smile. And so I really try to honor the people that I love and hold dear, that I'm gonna remember you. Like I'm gonna carry you with me forever. And just like I carry my grandmother's hugs, my grandmother held on to me. Like when I was a kid, she gave me the biggest hug, and I was just like trying to wiggle out of it because it was one of those long, super long, uncomfortable hugs. But then as I got older, she would come to California, and she would come once a year, and she would just wrap me in the biggest hug and say, "This might be my last hug. I want to hang on to you as long as I can." And I can just feel her wrapping her arms around me today. I mean, I think it's just the essence, the memory. Like I want to remember the people that I cared for. I want to remember all of you. I want to take each of you with me because I think that's all that we have left. It's that I love this poem that talks about it's not the money, it's not the car, it's not the cash, it's the memories. What am I going to take with me? And I think that that's really important for me to remember anyway. Yeah.
Well, the only way that our story will continue being told is if we tell it and give somebody that, like the legacy work that we do as doulas, is helping someone to ensure that their story continues to be told. I was talking to my granddaughter a couple weeks ago, and I was telling her about my mom, who was kind of crazy in a good way. And she's been gone for over 30 years. So my son was just a little boy at that time, and my daughter never met her, and my grandchildren never met her. And she said something like, "You have a mom?" And I said, "Of course I have a mom." And she said, "I didn't know that." And I realized that the story won't keep being told if you don't tell it. I'm the one that would keep my mom's story going. So I'm finding it now, like I make a point to tell stories, because I know that some of the things that I do are a little crazy, but I've watched my son do it too. And I know that he got that from me and I got it from her. And I want his children to know that even though their dad is crazy and their nana is a little crazy, it's been going on for years. We're the ones who can make sure the story keeps getting told. But we have to do something about that. We have to write the story and tell the story, and maybe put it in writing so that everybody has a copy and they get to know. One of the things that I do with my doula clients is I write this thing. It's called the This Is Me list. And I'll ask them questions like, when, if they've been married for 70 years, what was your reaction when you first met Bob? What was your first dance? Or what are you most proud of? What sports did you play? What instruments? What's your favorite color? And I just ask all these questions, and I created This Is Me list, and then I give it to the family so that most of the time, those things that I've asked on that list are things they never knew. So I get to pass this on. But like one of them was, I had this young girl who was leaving a 15-year-old son and her two parents to raise him because she was dying. And so I did a This Is Me list, and I asked her, if you come back to visit them, who will you be? What will it be? How will they know? And so we decided that for her son, it would be rainbows. Every time you see a rainbow, that's me. And for her dad, it would be anytime he heard Carole King and James Taylor singing together. That's me. And for her mom, I can't remember now what it was, but it was something really beautiful. And I got to give them that. I also said, when you're about to take your last breath, what do you want to hear? And she said, I want to hear their voices. So I told them that. So just as she was taking her last breath, they came in, and it was almost her son's birthday. So they sang happy birthday to him while she was still able to hear. And they laughed and they told stories. And she took her last breath hearing their voices. If we write it down and we hear about who they are and what mattered most to them, even if it's just about their legacy, we can keep telling their story. And I think that's important.
Thank you so much. That is beautiful. That is beautiful, because we forget all of those things. Once they're gone, we don't get to, we don't get to hear that. All those last messages, all those last goodbyes, all those important messages. I feel like it's kind of like this book that just gets closed, and so gosh, I love that so much. Does anybody else have any questions? I feel like I'm kind of monopolizing the conversation. Please feel free to just chime in. Peggy, please.
I don't have a question, but I've been thinking about Sammy and her group of friends and their friends. I am a hospice volunteer in Santa Rosa, and I could not see my people during COVID. And I love to cook, and I was asked to cook one meal an evening or one meal a week and take it to this family, but I could only put it by the door. I couldn't really see anybody. And my need was to make a connection with them that was deeper. And it sounded like when you were talking, Sammy, that your group needs to feel a deeper connection with your friends. So I called the caregiver and I said, you know what? Let's do dinner together. I will make your dinner. You tell me what you guys want, and we will eat. I will eat at whatever time you're going to eat tonight. And so I made all this stuff, eggplant parmesan, and for 4 dinners. It was sort of fancy. And then when I made the call to this lady, she said, we really just want meatloaf and potatoes. And I said, oh, that's perfect. So I took it to their house. We ate at 6 o'clock from May into December when the daughter who had cancer died. And it really made a difference in everybody's life. And I never got to go in to see the daughter. I never got into their house. But just the fact we were sharing dinner at the same time on Tuesdays and the same food.
I
Yeah.
love that.
It was a
But
wonderful experience.
you could also do FaceTime visits with her, and like you had the dinner, Peggy, you could do something like that, but have you all on FaceTime where you're all seeing each other while you're eating dinner, or just to have a conversation, just to see the faces. Peggy, that was beautiful. I love that you did it, and I love that you shared it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Peggy. That is hard. I cook all the time and deliver whatever. When my friend says I'm hungry for this, which she posts on Facebook, it arrives the next day or that day. But that's a really neat idea. We haven't seen her since October. It's she's lost a lot of weight. And so I think it's just a lot of nervous, like she keeps hoping that we can get back to porch visits now that spring is coming to Minnesota pretty soon. But yeah, I think that's a really neat, with delivering food and everybody's eating at 6. And thank you, Peggy. Thanks.
I do have a
There's-
question.
Yes, please go right
Gabby,
ahead.
I bought your book. My dad is dying of terminal cancer. Right now he's 68, and so we're all still pretty young and have our own kids. And I'm just wondering if you have any suggestions so our kids range in age from 2 to 12, almost 13. And I'm just wondering if you have any suggestions of like just good resources for talking to kids, and they're all so different. So it's like these 9 different personalities and trying to figure out how to be there for them. So any suggestions you might have?
Great question. There is I think, I can't remember which book it's in. It's either in Healing a Grieving Heart or it's in End of Life Tips, but it's about talking to kids. I think our biggest misconception is that our children can't handle it. And some have, their level of maturity is different. They're not all the same. But my granddaughters are 6 and 8, 5 and 8. And I know that if I were lying in a bed and I was dying, they would not only want to say goodbye to me, but they would want to spend as much time with me, maybe making pictures and stuff. I think what we need to do is be honest with them. He's not doing well. He's sick. Do you want to draw him a picture? Do you want me to bring it for you, or do you want to bring it? Do you want to talk to him? Do you want to go see him? Do you want to go on FaceTime or call him up on the phone? Kids who don't get to say goodbye to people when they die turn into grown-ups that don't know how to deal with grief. And if we give people a choice, then they grow up knowing they had one. What you could do is just say, look, this is happening. He's not got much time left. And I know he would love to hear your voice, or have a pretty picture from you, or hear a story. You could even do a recording if you're not comfortable going in there, and you could record them saying something to him. And if they're not, that's okay too. But giving them a choice, because they're all, except for maybe the 2-year-old, they're all at an age that they actually, as we age, we become jaded, right? Because of all the stuff that we have in our life. But kids, they don't have all that stuff on them to block their way of feeling. So they just feel, and they're far more aware than we give them credit. There are a bunch of books. There isn't one in particular, but I get asked this question a lot. So every time I do, I Google best book for an 8-year-old to say goodbye to their grandpa. And you're going to get the 3 best books. So really be specific of what you want. It could be a 12-year-old, and it could be, because the maturity level of all those ages is so varied. But it's really about telling them the truth and giving them a choice as to how they want to say goodbye or spend their last time with him, because we can't predict how much time he has, but at least offer them some choices.
Thank you.
And I'm also going to be holding some space for your dad and for you.
You. I think my The Invisible String is an amazing book. It is just about saying goodbye to your loved ones and how we're all connected. It's just a super sweet book for kids. I had a recent doula client, and it was really helpful for them navigating that conversation and helping to yeah, to help them have those conversations.
I'd
Kids,
really like to honor what Vivian said. I'm sorry for cutting you off, Christine.
yeah,
Um, sorry, you guys, I'm not feeling well. You could ask him if he wants to write a letter to them or video record. I have a friend whose baby was maybe 2, and when her father died, and they have this rotating picture frame of all of his pictures, and the kids say goodnight to him every night, even though they really didn't remember him. But they also have a recording of him and a handwritten letter like Vivian had put in the chat. You could ask him, just on the opposite end of what I suggested, is to ask him if he would be interested in doing that so that they can remember him, because especially at 2, they won't remember. I'm likely, highly unlikely, but at least have pictures, or to have pictures with them with him. And even the hands, holding grandpa's hand.
Yeah, we just made a picture book for all the kids.
Oh,
And my parents also recorded, the recordable storybooks that they
that's
recorded, so they
great.
have his voice, and we do have lots of videos and stuff. I think we're doing all the right things, but
You are.
you always just feel like maybe you should do more or something different. And
Trust your heart.
yeah, yeah,
You know your kids better than anyone else.
right,
Trust that.
right. Yeah. Thank you.
very good. So let's see. Karen also says the DougieCenter.org is another great resource for kids in grief. And then, yeah, Vivian says writing the letters and videos on YouTube explaining cancer to children. I know Tina has your hand raised. I'd want to honor your time, Gabby. Could we go over just a little bit, or
Let's honor Tina's question.
Tina's question and last question, and then we'll wrap up. Thank you, Tina.
It's more of a comment. My grandson was 4 at the time when my mom and my husband both passed. And whenever he came over, first thing he would do was to go visit them and play with them and, talk to them and everything. And my mom and my husband both enjoyed that. Didn't matter what phase their mental or even their body was in, they enjoyed seeing him. And when they both passed, well, with my mom, he went straight into her bedroom and come back out and says, "Where's Big Grandma?" And then we had to tell him that she grew her wings and went bye-bye. And he did the same thing with my husband. And at that age, they understand a lot more than what we give them credit for. So, I mean, if you are upfront with them from the very beginning and they see the decline all the time, then it's a lot less heartbreaking for them.
I agree.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it.
Thank you, Tina. Gabby, I can't thank you enough. I know you're not feeling well. I just appreciate you so much for being here. I would love to just share a poem that actually Gabby has written as we close today. I I'm just incredibly honored and humbled that people have decided to join us this evening. And so I'm just going to read a poem. Gabby, can you give us just a little bit about this poem, where this came from, and anything you'd like to share about that before I start?
Sure. Thank you, Vivian. I hope I feel better soon too. Uh, so I wrote this poem actually several years ago when I first started kind of getting my hospice heart page in, and it was about the conversation. It's about talking about it and how important that is. And so I wrote this poem and then I forgot about it. It was kind of tucked back in some place and I hadn't seen it in a long time. Well, the day that I sent my finished book to the person who's putting it all together for me, it showed up in one of my, you know, how on social media they give you these memories. And it was that poem. And I thought, oh, that tells me I need to put it in the book. So I don't think anyone's read the poem in a good 5 years at least. So yes, you may read it.
Thank you. And I just feel so honored I get to share this poem with all of you. I can't wait for your book to come out. So this poem is called Let's Talk About It. If we talked about it more openly, if we said the words out loud, if we pushed aside the fear and the uncertainty, maybe the conversation would be more welcome and allowed. It is us that puts the walls up. We have created the fear. We have wrapped it up in stigma. We have made it so unclear. Why do we dance around it? Why do we whisper its name? Why does talking about death and dying make us feel so much shame? It won't happen any faster. We aren't moving it ahead. Talking about death and dying does not mean we'll soon be dead. We should talk about it more openly. We should have conversations every day. We should ask our loved ones what they want so that we can honor them in every way. The only thing we can be certain of is that we're all going to die. One day it will be our turn. One day it will be mine. But having the conversation does not speed up the time. Having the conversation honors your wishes and honors mine. I want to talk about it with my family and my friends. I want honoring one another to be the message that we send. Let's stop avoiding the conversation. Let's remove the stigma and the fear. Let's lean in a little closer. Let their wants and wishes be everything we hear. We can talk about it over tea or coffee. We can play the death deck game. Let's have the conversation so that we can be the change. Wow, I've got goosebumps, Gabby. That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you all so much. I appreciate you all taking your time to join us. Gabby, thank you for sharing all your beautiful golden nuggets and taking the time to share your evening with us. I hope you begin to feel better.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here tonight.
Christine, could we all sing happy birthday to Gabby? Because she told us that she's got the big 6-0 coming. And so could we end with giving her our love and our voices to get her better for her 60th birthday?
That would be awesome.
Are you ready?
Already
We'll all
feeling
sing
better now.
together. Come on, everybody. Happy
Happy
birthday
birthday
to you, Gabby. Happy birthday to you, Gabby. Happy birthday, dear Gabby. Happy birthday to you and many more. Woo!
Thank you,
Happy
guys. That was
birthday.
the best.
Hope you
Great
feel
idea.
better. Thank you for being here. Thank
Thank
Good
you
night,
all.
everyone.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Thank
Good
Christine.
night.
Thank you,
Thank
Christine.
you.
Thank you.